Now, how long are we supposed to let that music play there, Scott?
As long as we want.
Cool.
Or as little.
I'm just kidding with you guys. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio here in the afternoon of Friday the 20th. And, this is, I think, show number 142.
Holy crapola. Am I allowed to say that on the... Holy
Absolutely.
feces
Absolutely.
hitting the fan.
Absolutely.
The historic moment that is today.
That we are all preparing for. So that's the question, I guess. What do you guys listen to? What show is this? Prepper Talk Radio. What does that mean? What are preppers? Who are we? What do preppers do? And why are we talking on the radio?
There's so much speed in that.
I know,
so
sorry.
What are preppers? I keep pitching the mics. I apologize. My voice is not so great.
I'll keep adjusting until we get it right.
The key here today is what are preppers? Why do we prep? The topic of the day is... Thanks for pitching my headphones, by the way, and now I can't hear it all.
Okay, there we go.
No, you're messing with me.
No, better?
There we go.
Okay, sorry.
So the key of the day is helping convince a non-prepared spouse or a significant other in the ways of preparedness. When I got married, I was very, very prepared for everything except for married life, right? When I got married, it was a wide awake, wow, this is different than I anticipated. Movies lie.
We call it the end of the world as we know it moment.
Yeah, it was the end of the world as I knew it. Single life sucked. Married life is awesome. However, getting my wife on board with being prepared was not an easy, hey, let's do this. And she came from a very, in her thought, was a very prepared family. Now she knows her family's lacking, and she is highly more prepared and more organized than I was when I introduced her to this.
Well, I think we're all lacking still, and that's why we do this. But what makes you and I want to be call ourselves preppers? Why do we prepare in the first place? I think it comes down to maybe looking at the opposite: is why don't people prep? Why? Well, what are their beliefs? What are their what have they experienced through life that makes them not want to or not feel the need to prepare for some certain event or the outcome of an event? I
think it comes down to a morality issue of whose responsibility am I?
Morality, right? I like that. Yeah,
and that I think that's the biggest answer of who's responsible to take care of you. You. Who's responsible to take care of me? Me. Am I responsible for anyone else? My wife, my kids. Right? Now, if you're going to go the higher road, we can say the Christian mindset or the religious or the Buddhist, or it really falls into more of a religious or spiritual mindset, where we have a responsibility to help everyone else out, right? Then okay, yeah, there's that. But you and I, none of us have a right to have any claim of anyone else's property, time, resources.
Yeah.
Right? Those are theirs. If someone wants to share those, or if we want to share our stuff with someone else, we can do that. But no one has a right to that.
We can certainly ask.
Right. And so that's where kind of today's topic comes from is a lot of people still have this idea of entitlement that's because I'm here on Earth and because I have cool hair and a funny YouTube channel, people owe me, right? Or because I've Snapchatted enough or
I'm popular
swiped
enough
right enough times that something is owed to me. And so with that, we kind of jump into this topic of, okay, how do you approach the non-prepper and help them become a prepper, especially a significant other? That's where we're going to go.
Yeah, and I think the important part that I need to consider that I wanted to convey in this discussion is that we're not necessarily preparing for a certain event. We're preparing for the outcome of multiple or any particular amount of events. We're preparing for the outcome of it, not necessarily the event itself.
Well, okay, going back, I'm not first-generation prepper. I'm first-generation calling myself prepper because that term really didn't get used very often. My parents gardened, they canned, they stored food, they stored water, they stored money for hard times. My grandparents stored food, stored water, stored money for hard times. Their skill sets got more and more vast the farther back we go in time. My great-grandparents, the further back we go, the more skills they had. the more labor-specific skills they had. Life was harder back then. But the importance of always having a preparedness plan, of always knowing what our fire plan is, what our flood evacuation plan is. I mean, those things were things that I always knew growing up, and I thought that was normal until I became an adult, and I found out that most of my other friends had no freaking clue.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you did fire drills? Why do you do fire drills at home?
It's kind of like what we talk about all the time is look to the past to prepare for the future. So right now we live in very prosperous times.
Sure.
I mean, regardless of what you think about the economy, whatever, we'll get into that discussion, but live in very prosperous times. And what did our ancestors do when they lived in prosperous times?
They saved up.
They saved up. They stored up their food. They got their home ready for the winter. They were constantly preparing. That was life. Mm-hmm. And because life has gotten so simple, I guess you could say, well, that's debatable, but it has gotten so manageable in certain aspects that we think we can manage every aspect of our life.
Right.
And we don't have to prepare beforehand for something. So that's kind of call it the ethos here of us as preppers and what we're trying to do here and why we call ourselves preppers and why we do this show.
You've probably seen the graphic where it's tough men make good times make soft men. Mm-hmm. Soft men make hard times. Mm-hmm. Hard times make tough men. So it's this always circling, philosophy of the times and the way we live directly affects the next generation behind us. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I'm not the toughest guy, and that's okay, but I'm not the weakest guy. My plan is to help create kids, my next generation, that are stronger and better equipped than I am. Just like my dad, his goal was that with us. And so going back to that, and going back to understanding we are responsible for ourselves, nobody else is, that is where we as preppers, in some ways we get a bad rap because everyone's like, oh, you're selfish. No, I can't help you if I'm not taken care of first. I don't have any other resources to help out. Right? That's first and foremost, we take care of ourselves so that we have the ability to protect our family or protect our friends, protect our children, and then move out to the next ring of who we can help.
It's like you said, it has to do with morality and your responsibility.
Absolutely.
As a father, as a parent, as a brother, as a whatever it might be. Okay, so our topic for today is basically tips for preppers whose spouses don't.
Or significant others.
Or significant others. Married. Yeah. Partner or whomever. Is how do we get those individuals to understand who we are and to help them prep along with us? Because it's terrible trying to do this by yourself. Mm-hmm. We talk about that all the time. You can't do this by yourself. Get your family, your friends, your community all together in preparing for whatever scenario might be the most common in your area.
Yep.
So where do we start? Where do you want to start, Scott?
Well, I think really it starts with understanding.
Okay.
Right. First, you need to understand your audience that you're talking to. You cannot just come out and be like, hey, guys, I'm preparing for a financial collapse. We need to be doing this, this, and this, and this. If they have no idea what a financial collapse is or how it will affect them or why we should be worried about it, you cannot approach them like that. So it all comes back to when you're approaching your significant other, we'll just use that term, it's pretty simple, understanding where they are, opening up the conversation as opposed to starting with a presentation of here's what we need to do. Find out where they are. I find a lot of conversations on social media are on this topic because one person will dig in their heels that this is what we need to do, the other person will dig in their heels that this is what we need to do, and they're opposing viewpoints. But in reality, do you love each other? Yes. Do you care about each other and your well-being? Yes. Are there ways you can start the process and move the process along without being at odds with each other and conflicting with each other? Absolutely. And it all starts with a conversation about current situation safety.
So, from what I'm taking away from what you're saying is start small, in every aspect, from talking about, discussing about what your concerns are, what you're preparing for, to starting small with your efforts, with what your preps, what you're buying, what you're stocking up on.
You're not even stocking up yet, right? Right now, you're just you have to get them
starting small,
acclimated, starting small. Like okay, what's our fire evacuation plan? In case of fire, what are we doing? Who do we need to call? What do we need to take care of? How do we go about getting ready for that? And that's easy. You're not spending any money unless you're like, oh, wow, we don't have any fire smoke detectors or fire suppressant. Okay, then we need to analyze the situation, see what we can afford, and get the things that we need so that we're safer, right? Because you can't just have, oh, we've got water, we can put out the fire. Well, what about a grease fire? You can't put that out with water. So looking at your options, understanding what you can and can't do, and where things are, where they need to be. And so start with simple things like that. Okay, well, what happens if so-and-so dies? A lot of times people think prepping is just about the food storage, the guns and the bullets and the Band-Aids, right?
The big events.
Prepping is about the daily disasters that come. Like, what if so-and-so loses their job for a period of time? Or what if you lose a loved one? And that's where it comes into things like insurance. It comes into things like a safety net income set-aside savings where it's that can cover your basic bills for the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, I think where you're starting is that I have this on my list as well. Basically, talk about and start by discussing some of the smaller scenarios with your significant other. Like you say, it could be from, well, what if I lose my job? It could be, well, what if the power goes out? And what if it's out for an extended amount of days? Because those are things that they can probably understand.
Yep.
Not some large conspiracy and say, this is what's actually happening out there. And you, like you say, don't start with those big items to scare them off.
Definitely the place not to start is those big conspiracies.
And that's on my list as well, is stay away from the conspiracies. There's no reason to go there, especially at first if you're trying to get this significant other to be a part of your prepping. Is definitely do not go to the conspiracy. Don't go to the big events. Start small. Start with the simple events.
What's like, okay, this, some of you may like this, some of you may hate this analogy, but it's like when you get married on the honeymoon, you just don't do it. You work your way up to it, right? You get excited about it, and then you have the foreplay. This is the foreplay to the real prepping, right? You're doing the small things, the family planning.
I don't know if I like that analogy there.
You can or you don't, but you're warming them up to the idea, right? You're helping them see the bigger picture, and you have to do it in a way that they'll respond to in a positive way. Now, if you're pushing it as an argument and you're like, you're going to put our kids in danger, you've already lost, and you're not going to win that battle because you've already lost.
So avoid arguments, avoid contention. And then that brings in one of my lists. On my list is get your kids involved. And I know I may be jumping ahead a little bit on my list, but one of the things that has really helped my family get together and my wife to appreciate what I'm doing is to get our kids involved, like you say, in camping, in using teaching them how to use an axe or a saw or whatever it might be. That is increasing skills and preparedness levels. It doesn't have to be so obvious to say, okay, we're going to go out to the range and we're going to learn to shoot, and but we do that as well. But get the kids involved, and my wife has been absolutely behind that.
Absolutely, and that's the key: is you start small, and you work your way up. You get the kids involved, and you work your way up. And if you make it fun, it's so much easier to get everybody engaged and on the same page. Because if you're not getting on the same page, you're just going to keep fighting. And fighting will never get you where you need to be. You're never going to get to where you want to be either. You can't just go out and buy a year's supply of food and be a prepper and be ready. Right? There's so much more to it than that. And so starting small is really the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that includes starting small with your food storage, just like you alluded to there. Buy what you eat. Store what you eat what you store.
Yeah, get a little bit more each time you go to the store.
And we'll continue on the topic after the break. Thanks for joining us here on Radio for the Ready-Minded, Prepper Talk Radio, with Shane and Scott here on K-Talk 1640 AM. Feel free to give us a call, 801-254-1640, and give us your input. All right, welcome back from the break. Thanks for listening to Prepper Talk Radio here on K-Talk. We've got a call we're going to go ahead and take. It's about maybe one thing you shouldn't say.
I like this. What things you shouldn't say?
Things you shouldn't say to your significant other if you want to get them involved in your prepping efforts. Yeah, are you there?
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
I would say don't tell them. Even though that's where we are, we're like there's three moon eclipses. One was in January, another one's going to be in July, and then another one in January of 2019. But they're known as the red horse of the apocalypse.
Oh, hey,
And there's
honey,
a
guess where we're at right now? We're actually, let me open up Revelations and show you exactly where we're at here in Revelations.
Yeah, 6:4 is the, and Doctrine and Covenants 1-35. Especially don't show them that one.
Definitely not the way to start the conversation.
135 will kill them. Yeah. So what you need to do is just in all your conversations, I would think, say, oh, this will be good to keep, like these gloves or these really good warm things. Maybe we got to go get all these winter things that are on sale right now and have those ready to go.
I think one thing, yeah, absolutely. And a great comment. And I think one thing that I tend to do, and I know Scott will agree with this, is that I tend to say more than I should. Because, like you, I'm like, everybody needs to know this. I've got to get this out, right? I have to tell everybody.
But it starts at level, like,
exactly.
It's like
step it down.
It's high school, or even better example is college, right? Everybody knows college. You start with level 100 courses. You work your way up. You can't start in the senior year and expect everybody to understand and know
That's a great
how to
analogy.
respond.
Yeah, I like that.
You've got to start as a freshman and figure it out.
Yeah, and sorry, go
you
ahead.
could do things on the sly.
Yes.
Things that,
that's the question.
To grab these, yeah.
Yeah, that's the question. How would we how would we communicate our emotion, our sense of urgency with our spouse when, honestly, I don't think we have a whole lot of time to take it really slow like we've had in the past. How do we do that? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Yes, I think you're doing something every day. You have like a list of things. Okay, here's the next thing we're going to do, and here's the next thing. And
Mm-hmm.
you're the eager beaver. You're not out on your electronic devices playing games or anything else. You're just
not wasting time.
Focused.
Yeah.
And it's how you approach it.
I think that energy will rub off somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that, the eager beaver. If you're positive and encouraging and uplifting and hopeful about it, they're not going to think you're crazy. They're going to think they may think, oh, they're a little eccentric, but this is great.
Go. Yep.
Right? I would rather be eccentric and prepared than crazy and not prepared because my wife fought me the whole way, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid, is that fighting the whole way. Great comments. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
It's fun because one of the things on my list to help is to have TV shows that are around that genre, playing in the background when you're not really paying attention. Like, for example, when I got married, all the Doomsday Prepper TV shows had already been over. But they were on Netflix at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are so funny. Watch this, babe. And she's like, what? And we watched an episode, and she's like, those people are crazy, but I kind of like what they did with this. And I'm like, uh-huh.
Well, I think even just turning on the TV, watching the news together, watching current events, and say, hey, honey, look what's happening over here, and hopefully that sparks an interest in, we should do something about, what can we do about that? So we got another caller on here. We got Cache Valley Prepper on. He's got some other comments for us as well. Cache, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me guys okay?
Hey,
yeah, we got
welcome
you
to the show.
Clear. Yeah, do you have any particular comments up to this part so far?
Yeah, I was going to just say that I think it's important to go back to the basics and keep it simple. I like some of the things you said about being positive. But a couple of things are, one is just to lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they see you doing it, that rubs off.
Yeah, just like the last caller was saying,
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of that is being aware of the other person's needs and wants and desires and budgetary constraints, because it's not always easy to just lead by example, because at a certain point you've got to get to where you're spending a little bit more money than usual, right? And so preparing them for that, leading by example in a positive movement, but then also having those conversations, those dialogues to get... because my wife and I, we don't make a purchase over $50 without talking to each other first. And
absolutely.
So when you get to that, you've got to make sure you've got the green light. Otherwise, you're going to have a much more post-apocalyptic argument fun. I shouldn't say fun, but you just had your own SHTF scenario conversation. And you don't want that. You want to avoid that. You want to be as preemptive and as forward-focused as possible so that you're having the conversation first, you're getting everyone's buy-in, and then you're moving forward with that plan of action.
Well, I think as a parent, one of the probably the biggest thing that I can think of that we can do to get our spouse or our significant other involved is focus or concentrate on safety, right? Especially when it comes to the kids. Well, we got to make sure our home is safe, and we got to make sure that our kids are safe. And what does that all entail? And I think that is a great way to draw, and I say my wife, I want to say wife, but your significant other in to that conversation.
Absolutely. Because it's easy. It's really easy for people to think you're crazy. And what's key is... Oh, you're going to push me so I'm popping again? Is that okay? We're not popping? Oh, good. So what's easy to happen... Sorry, we're adjusting the mic tones. Our station manager comes in here every once in a while like a frantic chicken. The sky is falling because we're off on our modules.
Mics are too low.
And everything's off. And you know what? We're okay with that. We don't freak out because she's prepared us. And that's the same thing as we're talking about today.
Oh, here's Kristen.
You prepare everybody for what you're doing preparedness-wise. Let them know that there's a plan of action. Let them know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Okay, I'll pay more attention here, and I'll bump them. These mics.
Starting off with simple. Starting off with the basics. Starting off with what is the path of least resistance with your significant other. Now, for you, Shane, it was safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one.
For my wife, it was making sure the people around us are going to be okay.
Okay.
And so to do that gave me the green light. Once we got her ready,
and this
gave me the
before
green
you
light.
had Eliza?
Well, yeah, this is before we had kids. I mean, So when we've been married 6 years, and by year 1, we had when I got married to her, I had a 6-month supply of food for myself, and all the stuff I needed for myself. And so we had the conversation. I'm like, hey, right now we've got about a 3-month supply of food. And she's like, what? Really? What? Where? How? Why? And so we talked about it, and I was like, this is just the baggage I came with. And she's like, that's kind of cool baggage. And I'm like, oh, by the way, I have 72-hour kits. I'm like, I saw you have one. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, let's go look through it this weekend. And so I showed her everything that was in my bag, and then she showed me everything that was in her bag that was expired and outdated and had been for over 5 years. And she's like, yeah, my mom got one of these for everybody 10 years ago. And so that opened it up for us. And so that's where we really started. And I was just like, oh, yeah, I guess you'd call me a prepper. And she's like, what? You're one of those crazy conspiracy theorists? And I'm like, well, that's like 3% or even less percent of the group is the crazies,
Well,
right?
you got to be honest and say, yes.
No. Because I'm not a crazy person.
Well, it is a crazy, but a conspiracy, well.
If you're going to call me
Conspiracy,
crazy, it's crazy like a fox.
There we go.
Right?
Well, what I was alluding to is just be honest. I mean, we've got to be honest. That's one thing we don't hide from our significant others, our spouses, is that we're completely honest and upfront with all of our preps. So this is what I'm doing. And, of course, that takes some time to warm up to that discussion maybe and let them know these are the plans I would like to.
Well, because of that conversation.
Let's have this conversation.
It was very easy for me to say we need extra water in case people need to come somewhere and get water. Because she was even worried about the neighbors when I started explaining what could really happen where we live with an earthquake. And she was just like, oh. Well, then as we started getting into more things, she really I got a book for her, and she read it, and she was like, oh, wow, we need to get a lot more prepared and a lot more organized. Then she got into spreadsheets. She started price shopping. She started bulk ordering food. And this is when I was crushing it in real estate, she's just like, oh, when we get this next check, can I take 30% of this and put it towards that? It's like, yes, please. It was very exciting for me because she wasn't just bought in. She was being proactive for us and for the group that we plan on being around, and being able to help neighbors and being able to be a resource. And so she's got more first aid training than I do. She's also certified, and I'm not. She's been able to go do stuff that I don't have time to go do, and now we're off. We're balancing each other out with more diversity and more skills. Where had we not had those conversations, had I not prepped her a little bit at a time, we never would have gotten to where we are now.
Okay, we got a call online for it. Let's go ahead and take another call here. Hello, you're live here on Prepper Talk Radio. Have a question or comment for us?
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that's helpful.
Yes,
is
please.
figure out one weekend a year that you would want to do this, and then go on a 3-night camp out or a 2-night weekend trip somewhere, and the only thing you can eat is what's in your 72-hour kit.
That's awesome because we did that, and that's actually where I got my portable. We call it the Scotty Potty, but it's a portable bathroom. My wife's like, we'll go on a trip, but I'm not pooping in the woods. I'm not going to just hover over bushes. And I'm like, I got that. And she's like, I want privacy. I'm like, oh, because I already had, I just bought a portable toilet, a bucket toilet, and all the materials that go along with it. But then I was able to get a pop-up tent canopy that has no floor, so that you've got all the privacy you need, and it's got a little hanger inside that I've rigged up to put toilet paper on, and another one for hand sanitizer. And so it's like,
there you go.
Now I've got that for preparedness all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That had we not done the camping trips and prepped her for the camping, that never would have happened. So I love your idea, getting that camping on the 72-hour kit.
One of the benefits is you figure out what you don't like, and you don't put it in, and you put in the things that you do, and it's fresh because it's never older than a year.
There you go. Absolutely.
You sort out the details.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great comment. Thank you.
So I think it's funny. I mean, you introduce them in stages. You start small and you work your way up. You start with the budget items. You focus on positivity, and you always start with what's agreed on, and you build up to the more important stuff. But it all comes from a place. If it's not coming from a place of love and concern, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares what you know. They care how you feel. They care how much you feel about them or
That's
how
a great
important
point.
they are to you. And if you can convey that, then they'll start to understand this. But if you're already arguing, okay, let's take it a step further. Okay, this is if they haven't argued yet about it yet. Now, what if you've got a situation where you're prepping and the other person's adamantly against what you're doing and you're already at a point of argument about it? What do you do from there?
That's a good question. Why don't you tell us, Scott?
Well, I just asked you, Shane.
Oh,
Here's my thought: is you have to retreat at that point.
okay.
For
yeah.
the sake of your relationship, you have to
that's a
step
good point.
back, and you have to think more strategically going forward and focus. Okay, I'm not meeting their needs somewhere that's causing them to feel distrust or anger or something negative about what I'm trying to do to help protect them.
Yeah, and two things I had written down on my list are compromise and alternatives.
Yes.
And I think there's always a way to do that and still accomplish the purpose of both individuals.
Right.
And another thing that this last conversation with this other caller had brought up, and your example of your little potty, is that a lot of these things we can
Scotty potty.
the Scotty potty.
Hashtag
sorry.
Scotty potty.
Hashtag. Okay, is that a lot
I
of
should
these
create
things?
a Facebook page for it.
Go right
Kidding.
ahead.
I'm kidding.
I'll like it. Anyway, obviously, like you mentioned, we're going to be spending more money, and that's one of the biggest issues between husband and wife are arguments about money. And so, although this prepping may very well be worth some contention, am I right? May be worth some arguing, some discussions.
Like arguing is good, fighting is bad.
'Kay.
Right?
Yep,
Arguing
yep,
is illustrating opposing viewpoints.
Well, I think you want to communicate. You know, you want empathetic communication.
Well, and that's what I'm getting to. So we've misused the word argument in our current vernacular so horribly. An argument is simply go back to the days of high school when you had debate. One person would be allowed to give their speech. The other person would be allowed to give their
Argument.
speech. And then each person would counter the points that they disagreed with in the other person's speech. Right? That is called a debate or an argument. Each point is an argumentative point. And if we approach things that way, where you're coming from a place of respect for the other person and questioning the principles and not the person, then you're going to have a good discussion. If you're questioning the person...
The process starts with listening.
Absolutely. But you have to approach it equally, allowing each other both speak.
Okay,
And that's where that empathy is.
Got another call. We'll try and get to this call before the coming break. You're live here on Purple Talk Radio. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yeah, I want to make a request.
Hello, Elaine. Yes, please.
Yes, for everybody to put their flags out at half-mast tomorrow
Okay.
and respect for Barbara Bush.
Oh, to respect for Barbara Bush.
Brilliant idea.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Elaine.
All right, you got it.
She's so awesome. She always has good prepping input, and she's a little spitfire.
Plenty of experience.
But then she's also got other people's considerations at mind. So we always love hearing from you, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine. Another thing I wanted to bring into this conversation, maybe we can touch on this after this next break or get deeper into it, is, we talked a little bit about compromise and alternates or alternatives in our compromise and in one of us wanting to go to Disneyland while the other one wants to get more food storage, right? There's got to be a compromise in there somewhere,
I want to
right?
buy a new car versus I want to buy a bunker.
There you go.
Right.
Lots of discussions
you could go a
that,
million different
that you can
directions
have,
that
yeah.
way.
But I think one way to go about that is to discuss multiple purpose items, like you're talking about your Scotty Potty.
Mm-hmm.
It is for camping, but also for sanitation in an emergency situation.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty simple one. There are so many other examples we could get into. And I know, Cash, you probably have a million you could spit out as well that are multiple purpose and low cost. I mean, that bucket didn't cost you but $5.
I have two
You got two
Scotty
of those now?
Potties now. So I have a his and a hers. If you or you could work it however you want
Neighbors
to.
or
But I
family,
also
whatever.
each one has 2 buckets, so I can alternate as needed and sanitize as needed. So
No, that's yeah.
and it all came from one camp out, and then we want to do a camp out with more people, and then people are like, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom," and they're going to the bathroom. Dude, you're a dude. You walk 100 feet that way and go pee on a bush.
And when you've got
You know.
7 people in your home, and when
You
they're
might need
sick,
2.
you may need when all the bathrooms are full, you're having 2. 1 is none, 2 is 1. Makes perfect sense in that situation.
Well, I think the
Or
other
not
thing,
to treat it as break glass in case of emergency here and use it all the time.
Yeah.
Then they can see why they have it.
Yeah, no,
Why-
that's a
why
great
do you
point.
need the-
Let's talk a little bit more about that after the break. Here's our music, and thanks for listening to us here at Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded. Please listen to and support our sponsors, as they are why we are here on the air. Thanks for listening. All right, welcome back to the conversation here on Prepper Talk Radio. You listen to Shayna Scott. And our guest here on the phone, Cash Valley Prepper. You still there, Cash?
I am.
All right, sweet. Cash always has important things to say that we very highly appreciate his opinions. We are talking today about how to...
approaching prepping with your significant other or whatever who's against it.
how to
Right.
inspire those we love to support us in prepping, to get involved in prepping, and make it more of, I guess, more of a lifestyle, because we can call it a hobby, right? And that's one way we could look at prepping is to get our significant other to kind of accept what we do. It's kind of a hobby, but for us, we know it's more than a hobby.
Right. It's a lifestyle. And in our last kind of leading out moment in the last segment was more about the daily use of these types of things as opposed to just when an emergency hits,
Break
right?
in case of emergency.
So,
break glass
break glass in
of
case of emergency. And I think, Cash, I think that was brilliant to bring that up because so many people think that they are preparing by buying stuff that they never use. Like the biggest case is
typical
food storage.
72-hour kit that we always
Oh, yeah.
bag on.
We bag on 72-hour kits day in, day out. If you've listened to our show, you know that they're garbage. Why? Because, A, the
break
bag
in
is too cheap. B, you never look inside, and most likely those things are expired by the time you use it. My wife's was that.
And you don't have experience with anything that's in there.
Yeah.
Because you use it once and it's used. It's done.
So your 72-hour kit, which, again, is not long enough, it should be minimum 96-hour kit, should have enough food, clothing, the gear that you use on a day-to-day basis to get you through in a short-term disaster. It's not a long-term disaster solution. It's a short-term. It's a Band-Aid to the bigger problem. That's what your 96-hour kit's for. Your bug-out bag, your whatever you want to call it. It's a Band-Aid. It's not the solution.
And that's where Cash was saying, well, let's not stock up on these break glass in case of emergency items. Let's have items that we use every day that are multiple use items that also support us in an emergency.
For example, I spend more money on tools now than I did 15 years ago because I want tools that are going to last longer than 12 years.
Well, then there's a barbecue. You have get yourself either a briquette barbecue or a propane barbecue. What better dual purpose item is there than to barbecue in your backyard for dinner? And if there's an outage, you're already prepared to an extent.
Just don't use your grill as your primary cooking method because it is the least efficient cooking method.
That's where we're kind of briquettes, stocking up on
So that
briquettes.
way, if you've got the propane, you can also use it. Like if you've got a dual fuel or tri-fuel generator that uses propane, also, hey, you've got propane that you could use on the grill. You've got propane you can use in the generator.
There you
so
go.
things that you can utilize and
Multiple
cross-utilize
purpose,
across
please.
multiple purposes.
All right, got another call. Let's go ahead and take this. Hello, you're live here on Prepper Talk Radio. Oh, I was a little too slow. Go ahead and call us back. Sorry about that. Have patience. We like to talk. That's what we do.
We'll
we
get to
talk.
ya.
We'll
We
get
just
to
are
you.
slow.
Just let it ring. Let it ring.
We don't have a producer
Yeah, we
that
just
helps
have
with
to do
our
this
show.
ourselves. That's why we're a little frantic sometimes.
We're bare
Trying to
bones.
adjust levels and pick up phone calls. All right, so where were we? We're talking about like the barbecues.
Yeah, using
Perfect
things all the time.
dual purpose item. Cash, did you have any recommendations for us? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I just on that point, a break glass in case of emergency gear. I think a good example would be a space blanket.
Okay.
Because it does have its place. Okay, there's some things that should be like that, like maybe your IFAC, your
first aid kit.
gunshot wound
Individual first aid kit. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's more of
But,
that should be more of a individual trauma kit. If it's a gun, I mean, you've got different types of first aid kits you're going to use, and you should always have a first aid kit in your car.
Right.
When you're in a place of danger, you're going to want to have a more substantial first aid kit, a trauma kit, right? And that's really what it sounds like you're talking about in that case.
Well, the point is just that first aid is maybe it's something that you're not using every day, but it's still worth having, in that type of format, like break glass in case of emergency. But the issue is that it presents kind of a psychological obstacle to get over, because by the time someone admits that they're in an emergency and opens that blanket that they'll never get back into the package, it's a one-use thing, and maybe it was expensive, so they don't want to open it for that reason too. They're creating these psychological obstacles to using it in time for it to do any good. Because if they wait, all it does is reflect heat. It doesn't generate heat. So if they don't use it quickly, it won't help.
So that makes the case for other multiple-purpose items, like maybe a wool blanket in your car instead of space blankets. But hey, we've got another call. Let's get this guy before he hangs up this time. You're live here on Prepper Talk Radio. Did you have a comment or question for us?
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Yeah. You're live. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, hey, is the old Boy Scout handbook available or something to that? I know the government published survival guides for both the Air Force and the Army, I think.
Now, the old Boy Scout manual, it's hard to find the early years ones. You can find them occasionally on eBay.
eBay.
Those are the best of all the Boy Scout books. Anything
Field guide is good.
Yeah, anything prior to 1957 when they started publishing the newer ones, they're more robust. They have better images, more pertinent information. Now it's more geared towards lovey-dovey, soft. Hey, let's do computers and electronic stuff too, which is great. But you can't. Your electronics aren't really going to save you in a disaster.
You're leaving out a lot of things that are more important, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How to get along with a girl. I never learned that.
There you go.
But
I don't think that was in the book, but it did talk about difficult
I sure could've used
conversations.
that.
Yeah. But
skill.
check out eBay. That's a really great resource to find that.
Okay, or Amazon. They used to be good at finding books too. But
I've never found that one on Amazon. Just the newer ones.
Essentially, it used to be how to make do with what you got. I mean, like layering clothes. How to break bows off. How to keep your feet warm. How to lay pine boughs down to sleep on and bust over them. How to build yourself a little hut under a pine tree.
Yep, they were very simple and robust techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, how to start a fire, keep it going. I mean, there was so much common sense in there. How to make simple game traps. And I can't help but wonder that seeing how I don't even know if they probably have a camping merit badge.
Mm-hmm.
It was my understanding that they used to have what they called a marksmanship merit badge that taught the boys how to safely handle firearms and rudiments of marksmanship, and safety, of course. But here a couple of years ago, the scouts in our area were trying to go around and find people that had any .22 ammunition that Obama had dried up the ammunition markets. But
well, thank you very much for your call. That's a great point.
But anyway, I think there was a lot of common sense in that old book. Take care.
All right, thank you very much for the call. And I think that's, kind of like I mentioned a little earlier before, is getting your kids, get your family involved, right?
Yep.
And what better way than through scouting? And usually
or the activities like scouting.
Or the
Right.
like scouting, exactly.
I think camping, I think hiking, I think learning trades, I think that's phenomenal. It's great to go learn coding with your kids, right? That's phenomenal. Teach them something else that they can learn. Teach them something else they can do. Every skill you teach them instills a higher level of confidence as they get better and better and better at these things. So gun safety and marksmanship. Yeah, absolutely. Teach them that. First aid. How to triage, how to build a shelter. All of those different things can be fun family activities, or as I like to call them, forced family fun time. Forced family fun time growing up. I mean, sometimes my dad would have us do orienteering. That's how I know how to orientate myself with a map. If I take a topographical map and a compass, I can usually triangulate my position pretty dang quickly. And you know that I'm pretty good at that because you were at the Ready Man Challenge with me. How'd I do? When everyone told me I was wrong and I wasn't in the right place, where were we?
It's spot on.
Exactly.
Yep.
So while I'm not
absolutely common sense, and I think that's what it comes down to when communicating with our family and our significant other is a lot of common sense. Like we say, don't get into conspiracy theories. Keep it small. Start small, and just realize this is going to take time.
Well, and like my experience,
patience.
I mean, my dad taught me these skills, just like your dad and Cash. I'm sure your family taught you skills that they translate across so many different business or career plans or confidence levels, or you can use them in so many different ways besides just prepping. And so, using it in everyday life. My dad made me find my presents for my birthday year after year after year with a map and an orienteering plot map. Like he's like, okay, here's where your first one is, and then I get a clue for the next part. And one year it was a fishing tackle kit with a new rod and a new reel, and each piece was hidden in a different place. It drove me nuts, but I found them all, and it took a couple hours. But it was awesome.
And you were motivated.
I was highly motivated because my dad's like, we can't go fishing till you find it all. And I'm like, oh, must find lures, must find reel. Oh, and then the string, the line was not with the reel. So then I had to load it. So those are all skills that I learned in a fun way that I can now use.
You.
That's a family, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was enjoyable.
It was enjoyable. Same thing with how to build a fire. My dad taught me how to build a fire before I ever got into Scouts. Sanitation and cleanliness. One of my best memories growing up is actually my grandma teaching me how to clean correctly and teaching me things like snapping peas and teaching me things like how to actually can your foods and where to store them. I was learning that when I was 4 years old to 14. That was what my grandma would teach me when I was on summer vacations in Idaho. I wasn't fishing the whole time. I wasn't having fun the whole time. Well, I was having fun, but I wasn't the traditional, hey, let's go get entertained. It was I was learning something and spending quality time.
And I think
until very recently, it's how it always was.
Yeah, exactly my point. We're almost out of time here, but one thing I wanted to bring up, I guess, at the very last here before we go is that we talked briefly that finances in a marriage and a relationship are one of the most difficult things to talk about.
Toughest objection to overcome.
Absolutely. So I want everybody to keep in mind that prepping doesn't have to be expensive. There are plenty of things that you can do that are low cost or even free. And we've done a show on this in the past, and you can, maybe we ought to do this again here in the future, but so many things you can do to increase your preparedness, from food storage to water to pretty much every aspect, for free or very low cost.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think it goes back to the moniker that my grandma used to tell me all the time, my mom's mom, and my mom repeated it for years and years, and it drove me nuts as a kid. But now I love it. It is something I live by. It's use it up, wear it out. Make it do or do without.
Yep.
Greatest, that came from World War II, I believe. Well, maybe it was World War I, but it was in response to everyone needing to do their part and not going and buying things frivolously. It's the same thing with preparedness. You don't just buy things and say you're prepared. You get the things you need, you use them, you utilize them, you get them involved into your daily life, and you improve upon what you have. And it's not an overnight, let's get prepared. Unless you both agree, then go for it. Hey, that's your prerogative. But in most cases, it's going to be here a little, there a little. Each and every day is a little bit further more prepared, hopefully, by applying principles of safety first.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you had to say, Cash, before we're out of time here?
I just say it's more about time than money, like you're saying. Enjoy yourself. Empathetic communication, which means listening, seeking first to understand, respect your partner, offer a sense of security, and lead by example. And
I think if you do it that way, just the way you explained there, Cash, is that your relationship is going to be so much stronger, and your purpose, your family purpose of not just existing from day to day in this throwaway world where things are recycled. Well, we hardly recycle anything. We just throw things away.
Use and abuse, and toss it in the garbage.
We need to change our way of thinking that way, and as I always say, look to the past to prepare for the future. And I still believe that, and I'm still going to push it. Cash, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks all for the great callers. You had some great comments, and we're out of time, and we're going to catch you guys next week. We have a great guest. His Michael Hawk. He's going to be at PrepperCon, and he is a TV star and survivalist, and we're going to have a great conversation with him. So don't forget to listen to us next Friday at 2 p.m.
Jimmy John's, freaky fast, freaky fresh.
I'm